Welcome, everyone. You are listening to Building Horror, a Fearzine podcast where we talk to folks in the gaming industry who have a passion for horror games and are developers, artists, creators, or just passionate enthusiasts. I'm your host, Dan Morris. I'm the head and editor-in-chief of Fearzine, and joining me today is Arseni. I knew it. I told you beforehand. I was gonna mess it up. Seni. Oh my God, I'm still doing it. Tell me, how is it? Arseni. I'm like, man. Anyways, thank you for correcting me. Arseni and Laura, who are the power dev duo for Party For Introverts. They've made a number of critically acclaimed short interactive stories, such as Thing in Itself, From Head to Toe, and A Lozenge. And now they are releasing Cabernet, a 2D narrative RPG set in the 19th century about Liza. Liza. Okay, yeah. Cool. And who is a young, newly turned vampire.
A lot of complicated names.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good job. I'm happy to be corrected and get it right, though. So thank you guys for joining me. I did preview Cabernet in our last issue of Fearzine, and I was pleasantly surprised with how rich and deep the story felt and the intricacies of the gameplay being woven into the narrative. Also, the game is releasing on February 20th on all major platforms. So again, thank you and welcome, guys.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, great to be here.
Great. Awesome.
So we're Party For Introverts. And as mentioned, Cabernet is our latest project, and it's going to be released very, very shortly on the 20th of February.
After much development.
Many years.
A lot of development.
Was it? I think I read it was about 4 years you guys were working on it?
Something like that. The timeline is a little blurry with those things because, when you start in pre-production, it's a very different intensity than it is in the end. But yeah, I'd say that's about right.
Very cool. So you guys are Party For Introverts. Can you break down to me like what it is that you both do for the studio, as it were?
Yeah. Obviously, we work with a bunch of talented, freelancers on the side, but generally speaking, it is just the two of us. And I can talk a little bit about what I do, and then I'll pass on to Arseni. So I am story editor, animator, character artist, a voice actor for the main character, Liza, as well as being like a voice director. You essentially just have to take on all the different roles, but those are my main ones.
Yeah. Again, a lot of the stuff we share, but not art for sure. I can't draw to save my life, but I do programming, sound design, write-in. I don't know, probably a bunch of other things. It's hard to recall, but yeah, it's just the two of us, which is strange because when you look at credits in our game, there's gonna be like a big list, because making games, as everybody here knows, is a pretty damn complicated process, and you do need a lot of talent to kind of achieve high quality in different areas. And we're very, very lucky to work with a whole bunch of talented people. But ultimately, yeah, we are the creators of the universe of Cabernet.
Yeah.
Nice. So to give our listeners a little bit more insight, Cabernet, from most people's perspective, it's not technically like a horror game per se, but that's not something that we hear with Fearzine. We're not dead set. It doesn't like have to be like horror, it's there's different kinds of horror, there's different elements, and then of course the subject material within Cabernet is very horror adjacent. Obviously it's about vampires, but there's a lot of more subtle context within that narrative, and that's one of the things that really stood out to me about that game. And I said in my preview, I think I related it to like watching an old history documentary or a show about the time frame that the game takes place. So I wanted to make sure that, we are able to celebrate this game, even though it's not strictly horror. And I want our listeners and readers of Fearzine to understand that horror is everywhere. It can be found in different places, and there's different ways of looking at it. It doesn't have to be necessarily like blood and guts flying at you at all times. So I wanted to ask you guys, now that I have you, to give me a little bit more of the background of Cabernet and how that came to be.
Yeah. So vampires are, obviously very cool, and we've always loved
Love me
them
some
personally. Yeah, who doesn't love them? And yeah, as you mentioned, I personally do love the horror genre. I don't think when we set out to make the game, we were intensely focused and on creating like a particular genre or a particular even style of game. We talk a lot about how essentially our game, it's kind of odd to categorize in general, even just kind of what the game is in the gameplay style. It's, a little bit of visual novel, a little bit of RPG, a little bit of adventure, all mixed in. And so I guess that kind of carried over to kind of the idea that, yes, our game absolutely has horror elements, horror characters like vampires and other, folklore and mythological characters in it. But it's important that all those things are kind of really connected to and really rooted to the story we want to tell, first of all.
And emotion, most importantly,
Yeah,
because again, we kind of always positioned ourselves in an emotion-driven game, and horror definitely takes place in this. There's not just a traditional horror, but existential horror, things that are kind of on a slightly more subtler level than jump scares or something. There are a lot of storylines that are grounded, but at the same time, we hope evoke certain feelings of unease, unsettlement, and this is by design.
Yeah, and so as mentioned, vampires were kind of a starting point. But we don't tend to make games just because we think something's cool. Obviously vampires are cool, but we didn't really have for quite a few years like a through line, an idea of exactly why we wanted to make a vampire game. And for us, it all kind of clicked together when we actually were discussing and thinking about the topic of kind of addiction and alcoholism, and how it's, to us, it just at that moment was such an vampirism as a metaphor for alcoholism just became such an obvious connecting thread that we could create this narrative around. And so for us, that was really the moment that we were like, okay, we get what kind of game we're trying to make. And obviously there's horror in, that element as well. So as you said, not just like, typical blood guts horror, all the different, types of kind of more internalized horror as well.
Vampires came first, but without the narrative behind it, the game wouldn't have existed.
Yeah, very cool. And I remember when I first heard about Cabernet, and initially there was this question of like Cabernet, like why Cabernet? But then as I paid a little bit more attention and looked at the trailers for the game, and I was like, oh, Cabernet, like wine, but in this case with vampires and blood. And that's not to say you guys are copycatting, but it's kind of there's a trend sometimes in stories with vampires where they like use wine as like they're shipping bottles of blood, but they call it wine to get away with it when they're trying to hide it amongst the human world. So it was like that clicking moment of like, oh, okay, so it's referring to blood as wine, essentially.
No, absolutely. And that was something I'm still not saying we created that. We certainly didn't create that, but definitely that was an intentional way that we're like, oh, people will understand this connection. This is an obvious connection. As you said, that's been used in media, but then we wanted to take it a step further. And the concept of alcoholism and wine plays a very prevalent role on both the vampiric level, but also on a really, really human level. And that's actually something that's really important in our game as well.
It's also strange to see how differently people take a narrative. I was watching a Let's Play recently about, with the demo, and somebody was, Liza is drinking Cabernet for the first time. And at this point, she's not fully aware that she's a vampire. And it was a very fine line to tread, because at the same, we both didn't want the players to feel like, obviously she's a vampire, why doesn't she understand that, and like be in that place for a long time. But we also wanted her to transition. We wanted it to be organic to the story. And weirdly, some people, they don't even realize that she's it's a game about vampires till they play like half a demo. It's very strange. Some people like find it very obvious very quickly, and some people don't get to that conclusion till much later. So I don't know. I feel like we managed to strike it somewhere in the middle.
Unintentionally, because we thought it was pretty obvious. But
I would say, for my own
nice
take,
that
watching the
people
trailers
didn't
with
find it.
Liza like gorging on that guy's neck, I'm like, this is definitely vampires, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess if you watch the trailer, it's a little more obvious. It's more like at conventions, you know, when
Mhm.
people play a game and they just like the visuals. And
Okay, so they're getting their hands on it without having seen the trailer beforehand. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also want to touch upon, you mentioned the name actually, because this has been a topic of conversation as well, why we specifically picked Cabernet. There's actually a couple levels to it.
Mhm.
So obviously we talked about the alcoholism level, everything, but also you'll notice kind of like subtle moments in the narrative. This takes place in a fictional Eastern European world in the late 1800s. And essentially, we also kind of wanted to play with the idea of kind of the bit of the Francophile culture that was at that time period, and or even earlier in the early 1900s, where kind of influences from France kind of started to permeate in certain circles in areas of Eastern Europe. And you'll notice it a bit in kind of the dress of the characters at the beginning, in certain fashions and stuff. So there was also kind of expressions. So there was also kind of a little bit of a cultural like nod to things that were kind of happening in that general era as well. And obviously Cabernet's French, obviously.
Yeah, and then I of course thinking about the notion of Cabernet as a wine, its palate, how it tastes, how it looks. It's obviously like usually it's a dark, rich red in color. It's easily say, oh, that looks like Cabernet, but it's actually blood. So that, again, there's like that. And like I said, when I played the preview, or I did the preview for the demo, I picked up on that subtlety, and there was a little bit of like my history nerd was like ting ting ting. Like I'm like, I dig on like how it feels accurate. It feels properly set in the time frame. The characters felt authentic. The dialogue felt really rich, and like I mentioned before, it kind of pulled me into it, where I feel like I could have just as easily fallen off of it if the setting didn't click for me the way it did. So I think you guys did a really good job with that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That means a lot, because obviously our game is not to, you know, not a spoiler for anyone. It's not meant to be historically super accurate, but we did do a lot of research and thought about what would kind of enrich the narrative from that era, thematically as well as aesthetically. So
we also hopefully helped with certain dictionary items. It's one of the mechanics where you can look up certain things from the time and culture. But it's also interesting that you mentioned the dialogue and that, you know, it felt authentic, which is great. This is one of the reasons why we don't say that it's strictly set in the 19th century, but it's in the 19th century with a modern twist, because again, we had to tread the line there with not sounding super stuffy, because that's not what we wanted. It's not the language of a game that we wanted to pick. We didn't want it to be like a 18th century novel with dry language and people using polite forms of address and stuff like that. But at the same time, we didn't want people to say LOL and go into full modern aspect of the language. So we tried to kind of be somewhere where it's accessible, but at the same time authentic. I'm really glad that for some people, at least, it worked out.
Yeah, and it works as historical fiction, where it's like it's not actual events, or it's not actually dedicated to the exact time period, but it reminds me of some of the better, more well-written historical movies and TV shows you can watch now, where it's set in a time period and it's the everything is according to that time period, but it's written in a proper way, in a cadence to hold like a modern audience's attention. Like most recently, I watched through Shogun, which I absolutely love that show, and it feels really accurate. But for all I know, it could be blowing smoke up my butt. So I don't know. I enjoy like things like that, and that's where, like I said, the game hit that like hitting on my history nerd a little bit, and then you get into the narrative of the vampirism and how that relates to alcoholism, and then obviously vampires have their draws for many reasons, one way or the other. And even that little bit that I played in the demo so far, it kind of gave me a lot of these nods of like Interview with a Vampire, which has always been like one of my favorite vampire stories, movies, etc.
For sure. Yeah, thank you again for the kind words.
Yeah, I mean, we
Go ahead.
definitely. I wouldn't say there's like a particular piece of artistic medium that we were like, this is definitely the biggest inspiration. But I mean, we definitely have our favorites, and as mentioned before, I love kind of like very Joe Hill-esque modern horror where there's a little bit of humor thrown into there, but it all really comes down to like deep humanity in the end. And so I think we kind of took different, mediums and stuff from our past, obviously like classic
also,
literature like Carmilla and Dracula, but also more modern stuff as well to kind of get a tone that we liked for the game that was both like a little bit classical feel, but modern and accessible, as he mentioned.
I'd say maybe Mike Flanagan could be referenced as a strong inspiration for us. We always felt, I don't know if it's out of vogue at this point, the term elevated horror, but that's something that's really important to us, that the scary messages, they are actually grounded in something that's real and authentic to human nature or particular emotional problems that people experience.
Yeah, that's when you get those that kind of like, you get that guttural response of like, the real horror about this is how real it is kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think obviously no spoilers, but we're talking about the time period and stuff. It definitely kind of certain like movements that were happening, certain moments in time definitely kind of inspired kind of like events that happen in the game and what drives kind of the plot forward at the end. And so there are historical, very vague references that aren't actually, a historical moment, but definitely inspired some of the later parts in the game as well.
There are big changes obviously happening in the turn of the century, and this was something that made heavy influence on our story.
Nice. On the notion of inspiration, I'm wondering if you guys have any favorite vampire games.
If
you have any.
Well, I mean, obviously Bloodlines, like there's no doubt about it. One of my favorite games, period, not just about vampires.
And for very different reasons. Obviously, we like the very narrative rich stuff going on with there, but definitely the Bloodlines is more focused on like the clans and the lore and stuff. And we love that. We didn't take that direction necessarily with our game, so it was fun to like find other genres that I feel like we like kind of like narrative aspects of, rather than necessarily like the structure of the vampiric societies or something like that. There's always something you can take from all this stuff. I was thinking, what other vampire games? I mean, that's the main one. Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, you guys opted for kind of like the sophisticated vampire, at least from what I've seen in the game. I don't know if there's hidden secrets we haven't seen yet of more like visceral vampires in this narrative, but in the world of vampires, you've got like the gentleman vampire, and then you've got like the monster vampire, and they're completely like different ends of the spectrum. Like go ahead.
Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
You're fine.
Go on.
I was just going to say, like, one of my favorite on the other end of the spectrum vampire mediums is 30 Days of Night, because those vampires are like monstrous vampires. Like, they're terrifying.
I see. I think that's one of the most interesting things to play with as a writer, the monster or a man type of a scenario. Everybody has that. In fact, this was one of the big ideological mechanics, I guess, in terms of our humanity/nihilism system. The important element for us was that you don't have one scale. It's not that if you save enough cats, you're gonna counteract like a murder that you committed like a few days ago. It's just that both are true. You can both do a lot of good things and both do a lot of bad things. Again, I'm not saying that we're not specifically classifying them as good and bad. We specify them as altruistic,
nihilism and humanity,
nihilistic behaviors, and both are valid, and that makes it even harder to distinguish whether a person is a monster or not, because we tend to not have any direct villains in the game. We these people we designed as complex individuals, and they have their pros and cons, and for different people, there are going to be different things. That said, we do have an element of lore that describes more, like you said, visceral kind of vampires. Again, I don't know how far we want to go in the spoiler territory, but
more feral-esque vampires. That kind of what you're alluding to. But yeah, it's I would say not as, because we kind of like, there's a society, outward society that they want to portray. I would say visually we kind of more so stick to the society, but it definitely is a thing that lingers in the background for certain character stories. So the idea of what they could become lingers in the background. There's a very particular character that it plays quite a important part in their story. But so if you get that character, you'll find out. We'll see.
Either way, like, you as a player and other characters in the game definitely have a chance to lose touch with humanity, and hopefully we show it in a decent fashion.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I was reading about that with the systems that you're referring to, with how you make decisions and how that relates to the notion of alcoholism, and like do you give in to this addiction, or do you fight it and try to retain your humanity, as it were? And I think that approach that you're talking about, whether it's the protagonist or antagonist, it makes them much more complex and much more interesting characters. Like, I've always been very adamant about, I don't like Superman as a hero because he's too simple.
Right.
He's way too simple. He's way too straightforward. Whereas like Batman is way more interesting because he's so much more complex. But that relates, in the context of a character within any other narrative, where if you've got sophisticated antagonists or villains and sophisticated heroes and or protagonists, it enriches the story in so much more because you're adding that nuance, as opposed to just cut and dry, like, this person's bad because they're bad and this person's good because they're good. It's like, well, sure, okay. But if you're giving the characters much deeper meaning behind their decisions, and like you said, you can do good things and you can do bad things. It doesn't change like where you land necessarily on a morality scale.
So a person, you still, all those things still exist.
Yeah.
And that was actually an interesting challenge as well, because in a lot of RPGs, you start as a blank slate. So the player is free to choose which direction they're going to go in, and they are not encumbered by the backstory too much. In our case, that's the opposite of the situation, because it was very important for us to tell a story. Yes, it's a complicated story and it has a lot of variations, but we still had a narrative that we wanted to show.
Yeah. So as he was saying, our protagonist, Liza, there is an element of choice, especially in terms of like starting skills and stuff. If you've gotten to, play the demo or the beginning.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can get into the actual mechanics, but beyond kind of those things and how you choose to shape the game from the point you meet the protagonist, as he mentioned, there's a whole kind of rich backstory of who she is, and it, without getting into spoilers, it definitely impacts to a significant degree the whole story going forward. So you'll just have to see.
Yeah, I picked up on that because I liked how in the demo you have the choices you make at the beginning of it that kind of determine Liza's character going into the narrative and what she's able to do and what she's not able to do. And obviously I saw like, oh, I can like up her knowledge skills, or she understands history better, or she understands medicine better. And then that changes how she reacts to things and other characters in the world, which is very cool because I know that that's going to enable me to want to do more playthroughs to experience things differently.
Indeed. And it was kind of important that we put there are many parameters really that make us different for the game. So the ones that you mentioned, the knowledge ones, we really like that idea of them being human based. So it's not just kind of like vampire characteristics that you're pushing or superpowers or something. It's you're still defined by human attributes. You're still communicating in this layer of society.
Yeah. So it's not a spoiler, but Liza does have like a history of being a doctor, for example. So as I mentioned, it's quite rooted in kind of her previous human life. And going from there, essentially you can shape shape skills, and that will, as you mentioned, more so determine like which characters might be interested in speaking with you and which relationships you want to foster. Because actually, for us, another really important theme of the game is how your actions or lack of action, honestly, has not necessarily always, super grand implications for like the future or the story, but also in more subtle ways impacts the characters that you may come across in your journey, and you may choose to befriend, may choose to make their lives worse, may choose not to interact at all with them. And those kind of like little differences for us are really something we quite like in games, and we knew we wanted to incorporate in our game as well.
Arguably one of the most important things for us. We spent a lot of time trying to make it work.
Yeah. We joke about it now because the game's done and we're super, super happy with it. Yeah. But it was, we talk about a relatively, long production period, which I guess isn't that long for an indie game with only 2 people, but it was always like a thing of wanting to add more characters because we all had all these side stories we wanted to tell, and in the end we have 15, you would say 14 official like side characters that have their own stories that you can choose to interact with. And it was just so hard. We just couldn't whittle them down in a way. So it makes everything more complicated when you have that many characters that may or may not interact with other characters in the game, when there are potentially life and death choices you can make. But at the same time, it was something that we think really not only enriches like your journey as a player, but even going back a little bit to the setting and the time period, there were little kind of topics we wanted to explore, certain like societal things that were happening at the time. Like, for example, just, obviously not necessarily going into super depth, but like the serfdom system that was, even though it was technically abolished by the end of the 1800s, it really wasn't in practice and still lingered there. And so these things we found really interesting, and we found ways to, kind of discuss them and, utilize them in our game in a very, we hopefully think like a humanist way, by having these side characters. So we just didn't want to cut things.
And we didn't.
Much to hopefully the player's pleasure, are, a little bit of extra effort along the way.
I do have a fear that a lot of these things will not be noticed. So a lot of effort went into something that very few people will experience or take note of. But I'm still happy with this decision.
Yeah,
that's good. To worry that people are going to just miss whole aspects of the game that you guys have put your hearts and soul into.
Easy too. Again, you don't actually have to do a lot of these quests. So we might be in love with this one character, this one plot point for this one character, and it's very easy that you might never ever experience it. Hopefully, you'll do a second playthrough, and that would be great to see a little bit more of what might be involved with the game. But we will, it's very much the big go big or go home type of thing, since this is our first full-length project.
Does that have more to do with the delay that you guys faced?
Yeah,
it was the delay completely was very much about just making sure the game was in the state that we wanted it to be and that the players deserved for it to be. We got to a point where, content-wise, the game was done.
We finished putting things in. It was there.
It was there.
The problem, like we said, was that it was very complicated.
Complicated QA process. As mentioned, with, these 14 different characters and, of course, the main story, and realizing that, well, if this character is not alive, then what happens with this one plot point with the other character? And it was just, our largest, our only large full-length game, and realizing the amount of QA that was involved, we did not want to release it in a state that we weren't happy with and we felt wouldn't give the experience that was fully intended. So that was truly the reason.
So, because the original release date was last fall, wasn't it? Like October, November?
I think it was 24th of October.
Yeah,
October,
yeah.
okay, yeah. Because I remember when we were doing our preview, I was thinking like, oh man, this game's going to come out by the time we actually get our preview out. But then I noticed the delay, and I was like, oh, okay, so this works out for us. But then, like you guys were saying,
tried, though.
so since then,
yes,
we crunched so much.
It's funny because we play the New York Times games, and you can look back at like months and what are you doing daily, like if you finished or something. And we usually are very far away, because we always find like 10 minutes to spend during the day. And September, October, just like most of it's just empty.
Yeah, they were 24-hour days.
We couldn't find literally like 10 minutes to talk with each other, not about the game, and just not like program fixes. And yeah, it was very tough.
Yeah. So it was definitely the right decision for us, as well as we believe for the players too. And it's just kind of a bonus that, the other platforms now happen to be ready.
Yeah.
But it was not about the platforms. It was truly about just the game not
so
being
that was
in the state.
you guys always intended on releasing on everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
did.
For a very, very long time, it was always the goal.
We did. We just, in the beginning, I guess like long time ago, we thought maybe we'll do it together. We didn't know, back when we didn't know the date. Then it just seemed like, okay, probably the consoles are going to take longer, so we'll just focus on PC. And at the time when we needed to do the big patch of all the things that were not working, we were like, okay, well, we might as well combine the two.
Yeah, and
It's a
honestly,
different team that was doing
if the consoles weren't ready still, we were still releasing on the 20th, so it didn't matter. It didn't matter. We were releasing. We for our own personal like goals, were new February was going to be the new date once we felt comfortable with the PC build, and we learned so much along the way. Again, we had never ported to consoles before. We weren't personally doing it, but
I did work at PlayStation for a long time.
Oh yeah,
I never actually ported a game myself.
So we've learned a lot along the way. That, but also just like scope that we talked about with all these different characters, and we really hope we get to make another game also, because it's been such a journey and we've learned so much, and we're so happy with the game we have, and we've learned tricks and tips now to make
found good people to work with. So many talented people that we're gonna
that's great to hear. I love the collaboration. I love learning about people finding things, and I understand and appreciate the notion and the journey of learning by doing and the experience, because I myself have been going through the same thing with Fearzine and running this magazine. And I took the project on from an original creator, and I've never made a magazine before, and now I'm doing it, and I'm learning a lot in the process. It's weird because I compare it to game development in a lot of ways, because I had to do a lot of the same things. And the thing I can say I'm most happy about though in this process is the relationships I'm building, the connections I'm making, and the people that I'm getting to work with. And it's fantastic. And I love hearing that you guys and everyone else has had similar journeys. And I'm hopeful for you guys too, that this allows you to continue to grow and continue to build, because that's part of what it is of like being a creator, especially in the indie space, like you guys are, like we are, like as an independent magazine. So I'm happy to hear that worked out for you guys. Like it definitely wasn't to do with the multi-platform release that pushed you back, but I understand like trying to make sure that the game is right when it comes out to begin with, rather than having to worry about it releasing and then fixing a bunch of bugs and things, because if you put a sour taste in people's mouths to start from, it's hard to bounce back from.
Also want to say, I have no doubt in my mind that there are still plenty of things that are going to go wrong when the game is get into hands of people, because everybody plays differently, and it's literally impossible to test all the combinations of all the characters in the game. It's just not humanly possible, and people are going to run into some like dead end situations, and we will fix them.
Somebody's going to break the game for sure.
We're at a much better starting, like very, very happy with the starting place for all that. And, but that's also to people's and players' creativity. Always finding different ways of playing experience that you've created that you might have not even thought about. So that will actually, in a way, be fun as well to take something like that into a positive. Is we'll find someone creatively played our game in a particular way that we didn't expect.
You do get a certain level of appreciation. Laura is amazing at bug finding. So Laura found hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of bugs back in the time, and it was a strain on our relationship.
Too good, arguably.
We're husband and wife. It adds a level of complexity to the relationship, I suppose. And
because every time she tells you she found a bug, you're just like, son of a bitch.
Exactly.
That's
she's a bearer of bad news.
Yeah. She's like, stop
it. Even like when you're really good at something, even for that, we've learned that, hopefully we get to make another large game in the future. And you're like, maybe QA is something that we should, give to someone else a bit more, just for the, ability to not get into little fights and stuff behind the scenes.
The trick is that we are the people who know the game the best.
Yeah,
so it's hard for, obviously there's like black box, white box testing. So both have merits. But nobody found as many bugs as Laura did. And you have to have right people testing the game, which again comes back to the fact that you need to have a tribe, essentially, like people who you trust and people who can do a good job, which we find
them, and it works out really well.
That reminds me, I was going to make a comment about the delay and how I've been telling a lot of developers out there, and with Fearzine myself, just how I am as far as wanting to support developers, wanting to support creators. Anytime I see a game that's, taking a while to develop, or, they've run into setbacks, most specifically too, I see it all the time in social medias with the horror game community. Some developers get a lot of flack for their game taking a while, or if they get a delay. And then of course it's pretty common in mainstream, like AAA gaming. If a game gets delayed, you get this rush of people storming to the internet, yelling and screaming, like, wow, how dare you make us wait? And what I keep telling developers like yourselves is your real audience is here. They'll wait for you and they'll be fine with it. So you don't have to worry about like the other people like pissing and moaning that the game is delayed or taking too long, because those of us who will truly appreciate it don't mind waiting.
I mean, people, I guess they come from a place of passion. If they really want the game now, we can only be happy that people want to play the game. Obviously, there are different ways to go about this. We were really lucky, honestly. Like when we did the announcement, we had so many good comments from people. People were very supportive. We have an amazing community. We just we lucked out so much.
Yeah. And I do like to think, there is a lovely contingent of indie game fans who, as you mentioned, are passionate, and also, we're humans behind the scenes. And, when you only have two people who are generally running the show, again, obviously with some lovely collaborators, but at the end of the day, we only have so many hours in the day. We don't have massive, eternal resources. And honestly, a lot of like the fans were really supportive, and they're like, you're already killing yourself. We know you're already killing yourselves. We know you physically can't do anymore. Because
and we couldn't. We really couldn't.
Yeah.
I'm saying this with absolute sincerity.
Yeah.
We did everything we could to make that date.
Yeah.
There were very late mornings.
Morning.
To finish this.
And it's a lot of, people wonder why they happen. And that's totally fair and reasonable to ask. But as you can imagine, and a lot of art is such a collaborative process. But, you have to, you have a marketing team, you have this other team, and you're all trying to make it work at the same time. But if you have, a delay in one department, it's going to impact the whole thing. And you have to kind of pre-plan, but then also try to be flexible. And there's just so many moving pieces that even though, we're both producers professionally by trade,
from different industries.
I'm from a theater background, and he's obviously from a video game background.
Yeah, you mentioned working for Sony at some point.
We would think we would be totally, in sync with everything, but especially with a small team, when we're the writers, and you never know what's going to pop up that can just completely like wipe out a week of your time that was
Solar
just
and the Reaper.
never planned. But again, we learned a lot, and it's really exciting to go forward with this knowledge, especially because we had made games before. We had made small games, but
games,
never on the same scope.
Because before the stories were,
Yeah.
our scripts were 20 pages long,
Yeah.
right? This time it's 1,200, so it's a bit of a jump.
It's an insane
Plus the
amount.
non-linearity. That's, I guess, what was the crux of the issue.
Yeah.
And it was funny with Laura's approach to this because, like she said, she was a producer as well. But I guess you always are a producer if you are. But the theater industry is very different in that things actually have to happen on the date. Otherwise, the venue is not, you have to, show must go on, right?
Yeah. So it was very much like, some, if you like meet us in person, people will tend to think that he's very, not pessimistic, but, very, very realistic, very pragmatic, like stuff like that. And actually, when we worked together on this game as, two producers, you found out because of my theater experience where, we have hard deadlines. There's no delays at a certain point. I actually ended up being the one was like, we're never going to make it on time. We need to cut this, cut that. And I think we, on a positive note, we found, and he was actually far more like optimistic, like, no, it'll be fine. Because he was the creator and he was the main writer and the programming it and everything.
I think it's mostly because I was the programmer, so I was the one who actually put things into the game. So I felt like I had agency.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was a little bit. Yeah.
You program, you're like, I'm going to take this month to program, but then you find out you have to do XYZ marketing and all these other things.
I guess it was my karmic punishment for being a strict producer for all these years. I legitimately, I looked back on my years of, at Sony and other companies and like thinking back on conversations I had with the team and understanding their pain a little more when we actually had to adjust to the schedule and cut things. And
like everyone needs to rotate through every department. Better understanding. But
you're kind of getting to a point I was actually going to ask. I wanted to get more of the details into how you both got into doing game design.
Yeah. I mean, obviously touched on it a bit. I came from a theater background. And as mentioned, I also, we both voice directed the VO, which was very fun. Actually, one of the, I think, most fun aspects of this game was getting to work with talented actors and do VO. But I come from an acting and producing background in live arts. That's what I always studied. I worked for some nonprofit arts organizations in development and as like assistant producer roles. So I put on some live events, and that's just always been my background. And while this was always happening, Arseni and I met. And we started, I think the first thing we did together, I won't go into your background, was I think I was technically an actress for a video game that you were making at like your master's program.
That's right.
We didn't meet through that, but that was like the first moment where we were like, this is something, I enjoy video games. And it was always something I was a game, I'm not a hardcore gamer, but I played lots of very narrative rich games. And we found a connection with that.
Yeah.
But you can give a little bit more about your background.
I mean, in a way, it's kind of simple because I'm one of the lucky people who kind of knew their destiny from the very beginning. So I always wanted to make games, and I did. I just worked as a producer. Well, I guess technically as a designer in the very beginning. Then I switched to production, and after a certain time, I just realized I really want to make my own things. I still have this creative yearning and wanted to write stories, build worlds,
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable going into more details of like your early like works, like what were you a part of, or?
Yeah, sure. Well, like first serious places, I guess, were in the States. So like my first proper production job was at Gameloft in New York. I worked on Spider-Man Unlimited as an associate producer. And, basically I was really lucky in a way that every job I had was better than my previous one. I kind of like upgraded all the time in terms of, what I learned, what I was going to. And then I went to Splash Damage, and at Sony, I did a lot of did a lot of stuff at Sony. So I ended up being a manager of production there. So I was, managing the teams of the whole department. Got to work on a whole bunch of AAA titles. Returnal, Blood and Truth, Sackboy, God of War. But all of this in production capacity. So I was working with people to make things happen. I wasn't actually creatively contributing to those projects.
Right. You're overseeing them more than actually building them yourself.
Yeah. So I helped ship them, but it was a different experience, which again, tremendously helped. I feel like, and that's very personal opinion, please don't take it as an objective fact. I think everybody should work in AAA before going into indie, because it's...
If you can.
Yes, the market is... the market's bad everywhere.
Yeah.
But there's a surprisingly high number of ex-AAA working in indie now, which I've been seeing a lot of, and like folks that we've talked to and worked with. And there's also the notion that if you're like a student right now going to school for game development and you're trying to get into AAA, you might get a job at a AAA game and then you'll lose it real fast, considering the market. I
have a lot of friends, obviously. Well, I did build a lot of... That's another reason why it's good to work in those companies, because you build a lot of connections and you learn to work with people, and you learn to, what other people do, whatever specialties do in the industry, of which there are a lot of varieties, and every studio does it differently. And a lot of my friends, unfortunately, have been laid off at this point. It's like LinkedIn is basically full of people saying, unfortunately, I'm looking for my next place. And a lot of times that's not where it ends, because they do find a new place, because a lot of them are very good, high-skilled specialists. And then they lose that job within a few months. So things are pretty grim. I don't know how deep we want to go into this.
Because we don't want to also make it so people just think it's super, it magically works to, make an indie game or to do anything like this, because we already had careers, and, specifically in video games, he had quite a well-established career as a producer, but, and it absolutely opened doors to be able to just talk to people and even know what opportunities were out there in order to get funding, in order to have connections to do things. But even for us, it took us, we pitched to dozens of people for at least over a year.
At least.
This was not something that, magically happened overnight. And there was a bit of luck involved, hard work, but also, because we know how to pitch. That's, kind of what we've always done. We know how to do it, but a bit of luck involved in, what's happening in the industry, what pots of money are available, what does it look like? And unfortunately, it is a rough time, and we were quite lucky with how we were able to navigate it a few years ago. But yeah, our heart goes out to all developers, because I do believe like the indie scene is, there's so much rich stuff that can come out of it. But it's really challenging for people to take a risk on a game. And I wouldn't say our game is like particularly 100% a risky game, but at the same time, it was difficult to pitch because it wasn't...
Find it risky.
Even though, I think if people play our game now, it might not seem as risky, but because that it was such a blend of genres and it wasn't necessarily going for a really hardcore particular audience, we're very grateful that, there were people along the way who were like, I get it. I get what you're doing. And we'll work through this with you together. Because it is challenging.
I'm going to actually make a particular shout out to, there's this, I guess influencer is the right way, YouTuber, TikToker, and her tag is Kim Chica, I believe. She helped us tremendously by just recommending us to the right people. So she got a hold of our deck at some point, and the place where she got the look at it, they weren't interested. They liked some parts of it, they didn't like another parts of it. And again, it's incredibly difficult to secure any kind of funding. Even back then it was difficult, right? But she liked it, and she thought, okay, I know a few people who might be interested, and she referred us to those people, and that's when it worked out. So I'm just saying there are good people out there.
Yeah. And the journey might be circuitous, but there can be opportunities, even though, as you mentioned, relatively grim right now, but we had a little bit of luck, but obviously a lot of experience too. So our heart goes out to you if you're trying to start from scratch. It's challenging.
That's what
it's possible though. You can still do it.
Yeah, I was
You
going to
just
say
need a
that
lot.
the reference thing is huge. Like being able to reference to someone or refer someone to someone else when you know that, like, I know this person can do this, and I bet this person would really like it. So you can connect those people together, and that's huge.
We had non-successful references too. There were people who were like, "Okay, I think I'd like to refer you to other people," and then it went nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also never a guarantee. It's just if you really care about something, you keep trying. Sometimes it does work out.
Yeah. And people remember you along the way. I want to point out as well, don't think that a pitch you had, just stops there. Like actually, with our publisher now, Akupara, it wasn't, it just didn't work out, when we first got in touch with them, but a little bit down the line when it made more sense for both of us. Like
the story was, we pitched, it was before we had the demo even. So we had the deck and we had, all the right parts were there, but we needed funding to make this all happen. And they couldn't take it on at the time based on like schedule, like financial aspects and stuff like that. But they responded immediately. Like David himself, who's the CEO of Akupara, responded, and he wrote how much he was interested and how cool the concept it is, and that he encouraged us to kind of write again. And then later on, when our game started to become viral on TikTok and other places, so we actually started to get offers from publishers. So like people were actually writing us and say, "Hey, would you like you to give us money to from the proceeds of your game?" When it's basically was done. And we were like, "Well, we actually do want a publisher, but why don't we write this nice person who was kind to us when we didn't have anything, right?"
Yeah, it works both ways. That they remember you, you remember them. So again, and to anybody out there, don't think that a quote unquote failed pitch is actually a failure, because it can lead to a lot of different things. That would be, I guess, our advice for that. Yep.
For sure. Very good.
Sorry, that was the technical, boring, behind the scenes. It's interesting to us producers. Yeah. Maybe not.
It's going to be interesting to someone, so that's what's important. Like whether that's one of the things I hope for with doing this podcast is there's going to be elements for everyone in some form or fashion, whether they're a casual fan or a developer themselves, whichever. We want to help shine that light on people's journeys to help them understand, especially if they're in similar circumstances, or like you guys are giving great, advice here when it comes to the pitching. So ideally someone's listening to this that is worried about pitching, and they can hear that and they go, "Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, good."
Yeah, it is an often underappreciated and undermentioned, I guess, side of this whole side of the industry, because indie people go usually not because we want to do great in business into that area, but because we want to create interesting, innovative things. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on the person, business is a huge part of this.
I'm sure you can relate, not necessarily just for video games, any kind of like more so artistic outside endeavor.
Yeah, and I was going to relate that too, about that's something that a lot of people learn when they get into the indie space, is that you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to know how to do everything. You have to be involved in everything. And again, the same thing for us with the magazine.
Yeah.
It's just really funny that this is basically the opposite side of it, because a lot of people, they don't quite, when people hire you for a job at the AAA company, they want to solve a problem. They don't need you to be, it's great if you are, a well-rounded person and can do a lot of different things, but they want you to do this one particular thing more often than not. In indie games, the more you can do, the better. And going back to like the business part of it, luckily this is something we like as well, generally speaking. we're definitely
not when we need a month to program and we're like, gotta go back and do that.
But it's fun. It can be really fun.
Yeah. As I said, I'm sure you mentioned kind of your journey, creating what you've created, and I think this is kind of applicable to all kind of artistic zones. Whether it's theater, whether it's literary, whatever it is. Yeah. When you're starting with small things, I think there's a lot of good experience that we can take on to the next thing.
For sure. And like I've been dabbling a little bit into game development myself. That's something that we're talking about with, Fearzine, and like it's something we would think would be really cool to do. That I've been making the joke on this show that this is my secret way of extracting all the hints and tips I need to get into game development. That's what the real purpose of this podcast is. So I can learn everything before I get my feet too deep into it. So
we're happy to give more advice whenever you need it.
Yeah, and then again, creating these relationships too, like for us with the magazine, and we're very much wanting to establish ourselves as this source and place where developers like yourselves can rely on us to be an avenue and a place for you guys to get proper exposure and feedback, anything and everything that we can learn to do and offer as a service within the space of being a magazine, quote unquote, especially in the form of a medium that's kind of not dead, or I don't want to say dying, but I feel like there's a nostalgia factor for magazines now that we have a physical print thing. And then for people like you, for developers, you don't typically get your games printed. You don't get your games necessarily a physical copy or a physical write up in a magazine anymore, especially with that kind of falling to the wayside. And there's something special
magical.
About that.
It's a very special feeling. Thank you for including us in your production.
Thank you.
Yeah. We love that stuff. We're very tactile as well.
Yeah,
so.
we love framing things, having memorabilia.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And like the more feedback that we've been getting in that respect, it fuels us. It keeps us going. It pushes us to keep making something that we're passionate about and that we know people are looking forward to being able to get it in their hands and have it and physically hold those things, especially when it comes to even me as a writer. The first time I ever got printed in a magazine was a completely different feeling from when I got like a blog post posted on the internet. It was a very different sensation that I could hold up a physical thing and see my words on that thing that other people are going to be able to look at and read.
Yeah, and we can definitely relate. And but I wanted to say something, but I don't think I'm allowed to.
Okay, that's fair. Some NDA things are going to pop up and warning. It's all good.
Yeah.
If I can steal any more of your time, I'd love to get into a little bit more like personal kind of things with you guys.
Of course.
One of the things that I want to get to before I get on the other side of it is I wanted to ask, what was the engine you guys actually used to create Cabernet in?
Unity.
Okay.
Kind of boring answer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. No, it's fine
because used Unity for all of our games, haven't we? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's just that's that developer side of these questions, thinking of, because you can't always tell looking at a game. Sometimes you boot the game up and you see the game engine logo, obviously, but when you're looking at the game without playing it, you can't always tell what it's made in. So it's
sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's very easy to tell which engine it's
depends. I feel like it's very genre specific.
Yeah,
like, people tend to gravitate.
I feel like it's usually a good sign if you can't tell.
Yeah,
it usually means.
I mean, most of the time you can look at like a heavy 3D game and be like, oh, that's Unreal. Like it's pretty obvious usually. But then again, you can still program non 3D games in Unreal too, and it's usually surprising when, oh, that was made in Unreal. What? And like there's a like point and click mods in Unreal. Like you could do point and click games in Unreal, and it's like never thought to do that. But so just going a little bit more onto you guys, as far as I already asked about like a favorite vampire game, but can you tell me like a favorite game or games of yours?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'll go first.
Sure. I will preface this by saying there's little things I don't love, like in this series, just tonally, but I'm obsessed with. It's called it's the Zero Escape series.
Okay.
It's kind of random, but it was honestly like I love kind of the very weird metaphysics, heavy narrative thing going on. And I'm not a big gameplay person. I like a little gameplay peppered in, but like I like a heavy narrative. I like the idea that I'm, different paths I potentially can take, or not even that they have to be completely different endings, but just kind of different options. So I love the Zero Escape series. I quite like the Persona series. I did like the Dragon Age series. I will admit I've not played the most recent one. But so things that are quite character heavy, quite narrative heavy, I would say tend to be my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I can comment on the Dragon Age real quick because my partner recently played through every single Dragon Age game over the past 3 months.
Okay.
Like just ripped through them all.
I would absolutely do that. There was definitely an era where I was like, I need 100% completion. Got to slay that last dragon.
This literally caused rifts in our relationship. The passion Laura has for Dragon Age.
But yeah, I have not played the most recent one yet. So
that's what
we'll see
she
that
started on. She started on the most recent one and then went backwards.
Oh, okay.
And now she's replayed all of them through at least once since.
I will just say I would say Dragon Age Origins was the game that kind of got me into personal, like on my PC gaming. I played it on a Mac, which was not
ideal.
A good idea. But I came from like, video games definitely had a stigma, I'll be honest, especially for females. When I first found that, but it was the thing that just like gave me the deep dive into kind of the whole world. So I should give it a lot of credit.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you?
I actually kind of went to a spiral while I was listening to you because I realized I don't remember what's my favorite game of all time because it's kind of hard. Yeah, I know what I'm gonna do. Like, I mean, firstly, I'm gonna say just The Curse of Monkey Island because I don't know, this is just something that will stick with me forever and like forever influenced my vision of, I don't know, 2D graphics and how it should be. I think that happened to a lot of people, to be honest, especially in the, we're pretty close in the adventure game community. We have a lot of friends from there. And I think it influenced a lot of people like that. Yeah, this was like one of the first big impressions of my childhood about the genre. And then I'll just say, I'll just name a few. Firstly, Gone Home. Again, I also have to say this is something that kind of till this day comes up in my mind when I want to recommend games to people who don't necessarily play them or just generally didn't play Gone Home. I think it's pretty amazing what they did and what it came to be in the zeitgeist. And I'll say also of the last year, because I think it deserves to be there. So Indica, I think it was a masterpiece. I loved it. Again, it's a very recent game. I don't want to claim that, I don't want to be hot-headed and claim this as one of the best games ever, but I definitely in my top for the year.
Nice. Yeah, we did a review of Indica in issue 2 of the magazine, and our writer very much enjoyed it.
So there.
I think there's definitely a vibe we have about like around our favorite games, and I think I wouldn't say it like directly influenced Cabernet, but I think you can tell what we like, and we kind of decided we got a lot of narrative heavy games as a cumulative effect of all the games we've liked throughout our entire lives. Kind of got dumped into it a bit.
I think, well, it's not, I would say it's not like a stew, where you just like
no, it was a thought out stew though.
But yes, we did really care about every element of this game. We're so incredibly lucky we got to actually finish it. Time will tell how successful will it be and what will it do to us in the future. But we are so happy we got to make this. Not everybody has this opportunity. Mm-hmm. And definitely the narrative stuff, the RPG stuff, the choices, the setting, the vampires. We put in everything that we really wanted to do, and I think that's why it was hard originally to pitch, because again, publishers tend to be quite scared when things are not a genre, like a trusted genre.
Yeah, I can imagine Cabernet on paper was hard to sell.
Yes, probably like not, because I think people got it. I think we had a good deck, we had a good presentation, people understood it. But they're like, I don't know how that's gonna, like, how many people are gonna be interested. Turned out people are interested. Again, another lucky thing.
If you have any cool concept art laying
Blood
around,
and hard work. We'll give ourselves.
True. Yes, we did work. We did work pretty damn hard. We'll see how it converts, but we definitely know there are a lot of passionate people who really are looking forward to the game. We hope we don't disappoint them.
And there is horror in it, I promise.
There is definitely horror.
Oh, I know.
It's hard because like it's hard to talk about the horror in it because like it just feels like a lot of spoilers going on. But we do promise,
especially if there's any shock and awe there. Don't spoil the shock and awe on me.
I think no, we definitely won't spoil it. It was actually kind of interesting because I was gonna say the ratings are out now, right?
Yes.
So obviously, like our game looks quite, it was intentionally, 2D hand drawn type things, but
like a paper doll aesthetic.
But and we thought that that would kind of tamp down like any like I don't know higher ratings, but we actually got some pretty high ratings. So clearly there's stuff in there.
You're talking about like the age rating on the game.
It's not over the top at all, but there's clearly some people think there's stuff in it. So I don't know if that entices horror fans. We can promise there's definitely some horror elements.
I mean, it's like I know I can speak for myself and my co-producer on the magazine. We both like very squishy, gross. We like graphic stuff, but I also can appreciate subtlety as well.
There's a little bit of both in our game.
Nice.
It's just, it's obviously a specific aesthetic, but
I also was going to mention real quick that I wanted to appreciate your sentiment that you shared about getting the thing out there and getting it done, and that sense of accomplishment that it holds for you, and not to say that it's the same because like you guys have obviously been working on this game for years, but like being able to like produce a magazine and I physically can hold a magazine in my hand that I built this, it's completely surreal. So I can only imagine what you guys feel.
Look how shine goes onto the page, right?
See it through the camera. Yeah.
This is very sad.
Like this is a thing that I made and I built from the ground up, and I had never done it before. And it's like, I can't believe it if it doesn't feel real,
You're amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah. Amazing for you. Amazing feeling for us. We're just like, we're at that stage. We're really just happy that it's out in the world, and it will feel, I think, even more real when actually February 20th comes around. And
I had to fix it, but there's like, I have the preview for your guys' game right there.
That's so gorgeous.
This is so cool.
Thank you.
Love it.
I mean, you guys made the amazing, gorgeous art, but then I put it together and put it in there to talk about.
With a couple of very talented artists. Well, you'll see them in the credits.
Nice.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people in the credits, and they deserve to be.
Yeah. They definitely helped make our vision.
So
you can talk to people, but if they don't have the right people, it's not going to come out. But they did a great job.
Awesome. They definitely deserve it because I love the art style. It looks great. In the vein of things getting made physical, I had a random idea that I thought could be a fun question. If Cabernet ever got a physical release, let's say through a limited run, what would go into your collection, your collector's edition version of Cabernet?
You're gonna like add things to it, or
well, like have you ever seen like the collector's editions that limited run puts out?
Okay.
So I got the Monkey Island collection from limited run.
Yeah,
I bugged these people so badly because I bought it, like I pre-ordered it basically, and then it's been so long till they actually shipped it.
Oh, I know that. I know that pain.
I just wanted to understand when am I getting to get it.
As we said, we like physical things, so this is fun. So I was gonna say, what is not a
the dream
spoiler for certain things? I'm trying to rack my brain.
One thing that would be a dream is an actual action figure.
That would be really
Liza,
cool.
I know it's a very difficult thing to accomplish. Plushes themselves are hard enough, but like this would be something that I would.
Figures for me is always a seller for any collector's edition. I always love a figure.
Okay.
I mean the existence of it, because it's mentioned like.
Oh, okay. So I can talk about that.
Well, we have we have a soundtrack, right, of the game. It exists. That's not a secret because it's on the on the Steam page.
Yeah. Like I'm just imagining like a really cool like I don't know something like physical, you
like
know,
a CD or something.
We just really like the music. I wanted to take this opportunity to like flag the music we have in the game, because I do think it is soundtrack worthy. We worked with like a couple incredible composers, and we really love the music. Sound is. I mean, you worked with sound as like your whole career.
Oh, yeah.
So that was something that was always really important, and our soundtrack would be included in some way because it's really great.
Yeah, definitely appreciate a good soundtrack and a good composer. And that's actually, I have a couple of composers lined up to do this show as well, and give them some credit too. Because ideally, I want to talk to everyone or anyone within the industry and the different elements and aspects that they've contributed to, not strictly developers per se, and maybe some actors eventually. You know, people who have been involved in.
We had a lot of experience.
That would actually, that just reminds me, we could, like a collector's edition, you could do very much like a behind the scene VO session, outtakes, which I think a couple outtakes. Of them might have been public in something, but we recorded like hours of footage of these, 6 hour more long sessions with people.
We have rare footage of, Brian David Gilbert screaming for Peta, and Dan Potter in his cat ears. And, we have a lot of Samantha, like literally in our homes.
Who's Carlac, who's in Carlac and Baldur's Gate.
Oh, yeah.
We have some really, really great VO actors who were kind enough to be a part of this. So that would be fun.
Yeah, we have a lot of footage that we'll hopefully one day use. And so we'll make
hopefully something. I would love to see, especially bloopers. I love like outtakes and things like that for any of those kind of things. Yeah. Yeah. That'd be fun.
Although I feel like you also kind of just like lose any sense of like shame when you're in a recording booth at a certain point. Like we always joke that like we often don't even use like the first 20 minutes or so of like recording sessions, and we often will go back and re-record like the first 10-20 lines again, because just like the comfortability of people like 20-30 minutes into the session and how it goes from there versus the first like 20 so minutes it's completely different. We've learned so much about voiceover acting from the director's side as well.
That's actually probably something quite a lot about. I bet people warm up quite a lot.
Yeah, typically with the podcasting, I try to give people time to talk and get comfortable and get relaxed, because I've done some things before where they just kind of jump into it and it's just kind of like, I don't understand like how I should be. I don't understand like how to flow with things. So there's always a element of warming up and getting familiar with people, even if it's just a few minutes.
I'm thinking, one more thing I would like in the collector's edition, like a paper doll Liza. I think that'd be really fun with her different dresses, because again, aesthetically, that was an inspiration, was like old Eastern European, like paper cutout animation. That definitely kind of inspired a little bit the aesthetics of the game. So like a paper doll Liza with, tabs and big different dresses. That would be really fun for me.
I have one more then, because we
keep them coming.
We have a friend who is really good at crocheting, and and she has like a collection of female figures from like history of like crocheted. I think it would be really cool if she did a Liza doll,
a crocheted doll of Liza,
or a little bat, Liza bat or something.
Yeah, can do both really.
Oh, that definitely, there needs to be a Lisa bat. Lisa bat in the collector's edition, the crocheted one. I've got a friend who does crocheting too. I could hit her up. Make me a bat.
Talented people, talented friends like that. Yep. I think that's our collector's edition.
Limited run. you if you're listening, start getting that ready. Yeah. But either way, I'd imagine you'd be really happy to see your game just get like a physical print in any kind. If that may or may not be in the works, maybe.
Time will tell.
Physical things are always, just something special about them.
They're special, but they're also tricky.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Not obviously as common, especially, in the indie world of you're just trying to get the game out at a certain point. So if you get the digital copy of the game out, your goal, it feels golden at that point already. So everything else feels like a big bonus.
I just realized this is gonna come out anyway after the release of the game or close before. It doesn't matter. Point is that we're gonna have art book as well.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
So I guess could be cool too, because we at first when we did it, we didn't think too much of it, but we actually are quite happy with. I feel like it would be really cool to have a physical version of it. I think
a printed version.
I'd probably redo it a bit. It's just a digital thing right now, but
I am doing printing right now. No, I don't know how that would actually work out, but that's something we would.
To anyone out there, if you happen to get the art book, there's spoilers in it, and we do put spoilers inside on the cover, so maybe don't flip to the back pages or something if you don't want to
look for it before you finish the game.
Yeah.
You said the first page is like
we couldn't not include some things.
You do the art book after you play the game.
Yeah.
This is something I was going to mention before too, because one of the new things that we want to implement with the magazine is a concept art gallery. So we're actually asking developers in our community to submit concept art, and we will feature it as a spread in future issues of the magazine. So if you guys have any cool concept art you're wanting to get us to share, you can submit it, and we'll make it part of our gallery.
We do have plenty of that. Just in the to figure out what's in the art book and what's not in the art book at this point. But I love that stuff. I love seeing concept art for things.
It's something cool, we got a great response to that when I mentioned it within our Discord that we would like to try to do a concept art gallery, and almost every developer was like, "That's great, cool."
Yeah. You don't even realize. It was funny because when we were putting the art book together, we're like, "Oh, is this going to be really hard and challenging to find things for it?" And then you just look back at the archives of all the work you've done that you forgot was done.
Yeah, we just looked through Discord chats and stuff, and we saw the work in progress thing. It was pretty fun to look back. Also, little known fact: before we did the the demo, which was basically a prototype that we shared with funds and publishers and stuff, we had another demo which we also tried to share. And this was in completely different art style. It was all revamped fully. So there's gonna be some of it in the art book too.
Nice.
That's a whole topic in and of itself.
That's always interesting to see.
That's a whole other conversation of what is deemed to be a good demo and what people want to see in a pitch. But that's for a TED Talk.
I do see those kind of dev updates from time to time where a developer will post something of their progress, and they'll show early concept or early builds, and even you'll see that where it's a style shift at some point, and you'll see characters changing and environments changing and things look completely different. Oh wow, this could have went in a completely different direction.
We have an Easter egg actually in one of the rooms. So one of the characters has painting on her wall. And this is her portrait from the art style from the previous prototype.
Interesting. I have to keep an eye out for that when I play the game, which is coming out in a few days.
We've got a countdown on our socials.
I see them.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I follow you guys on socials. So before we wrap it up, I actually want to see, is there anything that you're playing now that you're enjoying?
I am going through a bit of a backlog cleaning, basically, in that regard, because finally I can dedicate some time
now that you've got the game kind of sorted.
I'm trying not to open Unity, basically, because that's a path of madness if you start looking into something. So I am actually playing a few things. What's a current thing?
I mean, whatever you're playing doesn't have to be brand new or anything. Just whatever you're playing right now.
Oh no, most of them are old.
That's fine.
Now I'm playing Story We're Closed, actually.
Because, nice.
So that's another title published by Okupara, and they're friends. And I always wanted to actually have time to get through it, and now I do. So that's
nice.
Yeah. But honestly, a backlog of things. We were opening up Persona 3 Reloaded and Diablo 4, and just all these things that we're like, we have time again. It's been 4 years. I mean, that was even earlier, but I mentioned I like the Persona series, so we just opened up to see how pretty, the new remaster look and stuff. So dipping our toes back in slowly.
Yeah, backlog is a real, I don't even want to say struggle. I feel like backlogging is a privilege of trying to experience things. And even now I do a lot of that myself. I'm going through backlog games, and there's always that like, man, this game's 10 or 15 years old and I never played it until now. And it's like, man, I missed out. I should have played this game back then.
You know what would be appropriate to that? We have a backlog of Resident Evil, actually, because we did play Village when it came out.
Yes.
And we did not know how fun those games were for, like, I'm a backseat driver gamer. Like, I love watching those types of games be played. And so that game was just hilarious fun. It was just so much fun. And so then we kind of like are slowly like dipping our toes into the other ones that we just never played before, which again is obviously they're very old and classic and stuff. But things like that are fun, especially I think as like a couple also to find like fun series that you can just sit there and.
Yeah, we started the 7th one so many times.
Yeah. And it's fun. It's just we've been busy. We got time. Hopefully we have time now. Again, we'll be back probably, fixing the bugs in the upcoming weeks. Hopefully not too many, but it's kind of sad. The development. It's sad in a way though, because like we've just been in this development haze for so long. We have to adjust to real life again, just for a bit.
And also, I want to say about the backlog. There is definitely like an element of privilege to it, to have it. And one of the reasons is, I just remember growing up, there were so many games that I couldn't put my hands on because either they were not available, like they were on a platform that I didn't have, or they were just not imported to where I'm from. And now basically I can play anything that I ever dreamed of playing. I can like download within 10 minutes, and it's pretty I sometimes think about it, and even though I'm not gonna do it, like chances are I'm not gonna play like a Mega Drive game from a 96, but the fact that I can makes me happier.
Yeah, the it goes into like the game preservation conversation, and being able to play games that you wouldn't have been able to play 15, 20 years ago, depending on different elements of your life, especially if you're a kid playing video games back in like the 90s and stuff. There was so few games, and you played what you could get, especially when, like, if you're a kid, you're not able to buy your own games, and whether or not your parents were able to buy them for you or get gifted games. And now it's like you're overwhelmed by the sense of choice, and like this, I think that's a bigger struggle I face more than the struggle of a backlog, is that I have the choice of paralyzation of choice, because there's so many games to play, and like I can look up, I have a giant wall of games behind me, not to mention a giant digital library on Steam and whatnot. I can open up the library and just sit there and stare at it like, what do I play? Oh my God, what do I play? I don't know.
I guess it's similar to Netflix and stuff, and how you spend more time nowadays just scrolling through it than actually watching something in the end of the day. And ultimately choosing to rewatch Friends or something.
It's kind of like the games too. I end up playing the same games over and over. Like I replay Resident Evil for the 8th time of the month or something,
Yeah, comfort games. We've got our comfort games.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Anything else you guys want to shout out, or you've already done a few shout outs for your team members, or if you want to do your pitch for people to check out Cabernet, I'll give you a chance to share anything you want to share.
We want people to check out Cabernet.
Yeah,
please do. We would be very happy if you did.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So Cabernet, a labor of love, hybrid, visual novel, RPG, adventure, but with about vampires, but a lot of humanity in there too. Comes out on February 20th on all major platforms. You can pre-order it already on Switch, Xbox, and PlayStation.
want to say, yeah, GOG.
And
I think
GOG
you can do
as
too.
well. And we're probably missing something else. And obviously, it's also on Steam. Unfortunately, you can't pre-order it on Steam, but
you can wish list, which
you
is
can
also
wish
very
list.
important.
Yes,
Mhm.
definitely wish list. If you can, wish list and buy on the 20th.
By the time this is out,
It's coming
it's
out.
almost
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
the time. So
Mhm.
just get it when you.
So what's
Where
the
you-
the asking price on Cabernet?
$19.99 in dollars. I think it launches with like a launch discount or something, but I'm not sure. I think it's individual to platforms.
So for the price of a large pizza, you can get this awesome interactive
Yeah.
vampire game.
That's nice.
It's a lot. It's a lot of content, really.
Mhm.
We didn't think it's going to be that much content as it is, and I'm not even talking about like replayability and stuff. It's just there's a lot of story and dialogue and beautifully voice acted lines. We had so many talented people, including Laura, who plays Liza, the main character, who contributed to our game. I don't know. I think it's really good.
We
Might
really
be a
like
little
your
biased,
game,
but it's really good.
genuinely. So that's nice. That's nice to feel that way.
Yeah, I really hope you feel so too.
Very cool. Yes, I do plan on getting into it, and I'm happy to hear it's coming to major platforms because I tend to play more specifically on Xbox. I have everything, but that's where I find myself most of the time, and I always get a little irked when things skip certain consoles or platforms. I don't know why Xbox gets shorted sometimes, especially with indie games for some reason. But I'm happy to hear.
Hard.
Porting's hard and
much
expensive.
harder than we thought.
Yeah.
I did just recently read a report that said that Xbox is usually much more, not to say strict when it comes to porting games, but they have a much higher requirements because in the realistic aspect of that is on the Switch and on PlayStation, there's a lot of like bloatware and shovelware, and or on PlayStation you get the platinum where basically people make a game that they sell just so you can get an easy platinum because people do that. But Xbox apparently has much higher requirements, so it makes it a little harder to port, but it also weeds out some of that, for lack of a better word, trash games that get put on platforms. So
we have we have a lot of respect for people who do the porting. Fortunately, we obviously assist, but that was our focus was always on PC. So we see it from the sidelines and the effort it takes. So
I think that's a key thing we can mention too that I don't know if a lot of people understand is most of the time ports aren't handled by the developers themselves. So for you guys listening, be aware of that. A lot of times ports aren't done by the actual developers themselves.
Because there's just an insane amount of things that you don't think about that goes into actually making the build in the first place, submitting it to a console, getting through the tests, getting through the checks for like particular platform, different formats of achievements, different like interfaces that the game interacts with, like the platform and the store and the network, and these things are not for everybody. Like I programmed the whole game, which again I never thought that I will undertake a project like that with my own hands, of that scope, right? But I did it. I definitely would not, it would be hard for me to do all those things. It would be hard for me to kind of gather all this information and do it in a timely manner, especially.
Yeah. So our hats off to all the porters. Our focus, obviously, it's how it worked is we stay on PC for the most part, and that's our main focus. And another team works really hard to get that stuff out there. So again, goes back to a lot of teamwork, a lot of moving pieces. But yeah, we're so happy we got the PC, up and ready when we did, and we're really lucky that it happened to correspond with when the other stuff came out too. So it's fun to be able to say all platforms.
It's fun to say.
Yeah.
I'm sure it feels very good, and that's where I want people to understand, like, a lot of hard work and time and effort goes into these projects, and especially for small, teams like yourselves or indie developers. So, like, for a small asking price of $20, like, come on, like,
Come on.
Definitely support indie games. We appreciate it, and it definitely. I mean, it does. It adds a richness, to be able to, play different games that aren't lots of labors of love. Not that AAA games aren't, but on a kind of a different, very very personal level in many cases. So thank
For
you.
sure.
Oh, and another thing on the same subject, if you do get a copy on Steam, for example, please write a review if you can.
Yeah.
That, again, it's hard to overestimate how important both wish lists and reviews are. This helps the algorithm, and we all are.
Everything's algorithm now.
So under its whim.
I appreciate reviews too, very very much so, beyond the fact that I work in the industry of writing reviews and things, but even to the point of like Xbox has reviews for their games and their store, but PlayStation doesn't, quote unquote. Like they have a rating system attached to games on their store, but you can't actually look at and read those reviews on the PlayStation. I don't even know how people submit those reviews unless they have to do it via the website.
Yeah.
But I often will look at a game on the Xbox store or Steam, and I look at the ratings, and then I look at the reviews, and I will read people's reviews, very thoroughly, especially when I'm trying to make a judgment call about a game. And it's incredibly interesting to me that a bunch of people will be like, oh, this game's fine. It's a 3, a 3, a 3, or it's a 4, or it's a 2. But then I'll find that one review of someone that was like, yeah, the game's not too bad, but I really liked this specific element about that game. And that one thing will make me go, I will like that element. So that's enough to make me want to buy that game and give it the effort. So you never know what one review can make a difference.
That's a human element to it, right? Like there's the machine element that, obviously the more reviews you get, the more pushed you get by different platforms. But that's also a really good reason to write a review, because it's very nice to connect. And that's a big part of why we did this.
Yeah, honestly, like some of our favorite, like there's discussion boards on Steam and stuff like that. And some of like the best ones are, obviously it's nice to hear positive things. You have that. But then they're also like, oh, but there's this one thing. And so actually like that's helped us to be like, oh, we can tweak that. Obviously, you can't change a lot, but like, even if it's something simple, like, oh, in this one context, it doesn't seem like this button worked correctly or something. Like we read them, and it's lovely to get all sorts of different constructive
feedback,
positively constructive feedback as well. And obviously we hope there's some lovely reviews as well, but reviews just help in general.
I asked for the same thing for this podcast, so for my listeners, please, leave reviews on the podcast. Let me know what you think of how these recordings are coming through, how this podcast is presented, things that you would like to see, you'd like to hear. It's all the same. I'm constantly always looking for feedback, because feedback is the only way that you make things better. It's how you gear your product around your audience. And, it's a two-way street. You talk to us, we talk to you, we make everything better.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and close this out, guys. Thank you so very, very much for taking your time to talk with me, tell me all of these wonderful things about your game with Cabernet. I look forward to getting into it, most likely on the Xbox in a few days, and giving it a proper playthrough, hearing more about Liza's story and all these wonderful characters. Lastly, I'll just reiterate to my listeners, please go check out Cabernet, which is releasing on the 20th of February, which should be a few days from now, if not a little after, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. And check it out, especially if you're into all these notions of the narrative vampire stories. And thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you guys for being here. I very much appreciate your time. It's been awesome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
I constantly get into little I go around in circles thanking people, because I appreciate so much when people actually take the time to come and talk to me and do these shows. And obviously, this is for you guys too. But again, I'm very humbled by the fact that people are willing to sit here and talk with me. So
this has been very fun. Thank you.
Great. I love hearing when people have a good time and have fun doing this.
You let us ramble nice and long. Thank you.
I love it. I love it all. I will sit here and let you guys talk. We don't have to stop. We'll just keep going. Keep talking.
We'd love to. We actually have to go to a game meeting in a few minutes. So this is a good.
Fair enough. Well, maybe another time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Again, thank you guys. And thank you all to my listeners. Thank you for everyone checking out the podcast. Be sure to check out Fearzine and Fearzine Magazine. We'll be launching a new Kickstarter soon for our next issue, which we will have our review for Cabernet in. Nice. And just stay horrifically wholesome, which is what we call our community. Horrifically wholesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Fearzine.